Hey folks, welcome back to another video on the Flutter development course brought to you by Newton School. For those of you who are wondering who I am, so my name is Harsh Kumar Khatri and I'll be your instructor for this Flutter development course. I am currently working as an intern at Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and I have been an ex-Flutter developer intern at AppScript, where my primary goal was to develop Flutter application totally from scratch depending upon the needs. I am also an instructor on Udemy and Eduonix, where I have more than 10,000 enrollments in my Flutter development courses. For those of you who are wondering what Newton School is, so basically Newton School is a platform which will be helping you to learn and develop the skills that you need for your best tech career. There are courses specifically designed for freshers, working professionals, and for women with no prior experience in tech. Newton School first trains you for 6 months and then helps you develop a full stack developer. It also has a network of more than 300 great companies who hire directly from Newton School. So once the training is completed, Newton School also ensures that you are placed with one of the best companies in the country. They are also having a pay after placement program where you don't have to pay Newton School anything until you get placed with a minimum CTC of 5 lakh rupees per annum. They also have an awesome initiative known as Launchpad, where they will be providing you with some of the courses for free of cost and with an editor where you can practice and work on those courses, and you will be getting a certificate of completion when you will be completing those courses. For more info about Launchpad and Newton School, you can check out the link given in the description. Now talking about the topics for today's video. So in today's video, we will be seeing three different types of architectures which are present in Flutter. So first we'll be going through the basic file structure or file architecture which is present, which most of the beginner Flutter developers use. Next we'll be seeing the intermediate file architecture which is used by many of the Flutter developers who have some experience in Flutter or working with Flutter. Next we'll be seeing the advanced file structure which is being used in the industry, and many of the companies use this type of architecture for developing or working on their Flutter projects. So now let's get started with the first one, that is the basic file structure. So let me switch this screen. So here you can see that I have opened my VS Code over here, which is having a Flutter project which is the one which we have developed in the previous video. So here you can see that the increment app or the counter app, basic counter app which we have developed in the previous video. So I have opened that one as only. So this is the basic file architecture or file structure which is present, which comes pre-built when we are making a default Flutter app. So let me walk you through the through each of these files or directories which are present over here. So the first one which you can see over here is the Dart tools. So what Dart tools has is it will be storing all your data related to the Flutter build, the package configurations which you have added, like these are the ones which are added by default. So this is what this Dart tool will be handling. It will also be handling the version of your app. It will also be showing you with the version, like you can see over here. This is the Flutter version which is installed for us in the stable channel. So this is what .dart tools has. We generally don't interact with this particular directory, and also with this .idea directory. It generally has the libraries which is related to, you can see that the Dart SDK and the Kotlin Java runtime environment, it is having those libraries and the runtime configurations for our app as well. So we don't interact with both of these directories. The ones which we interact with most are this Android, iOS and lib directory. Let's have a look at the Android directory. So inside this Android directory, we have this .gradle file or .gradle directory which has all the data related to Gradle. So basic data, it won't be pushed to GitHub when we are sending this Android directory to GitHub. Next we have this app directory which holds most of the data which we'll be using or we'll be interacting with. Inside it we are having source directory which then holds the debug main and profile. So if you are familiar with the Kotlin development, you must be familiar with all of these files. Inside this debug we have an Android manifest.xml file which will be used used in the debug environment. Inside it inside the source directory we are also having this main directory which holds all the data related to our Android project when we are working with Kotlin or Java. But in this case it don't holds much data. Only the basic which is being created when we are running the Flutter create or creating a new Flutter project is stored inside it. Inside this main directory you can ignore this Java directory, Kotlin and Rails directory, but the one which we interact with is this Android manifest .xml file over here. So why do we use this Android manifest .xml file? So we generally use this file for changing the icons present inside our app, or for changing or adding some of the permissions inside our app. So if we want our app to utilize the internet or the Wi-Fi connection which is present or which is inside our mobile, then we can add a permission for this over here, and accordingly then the app will be utilizing the internet inside our app. So that's why we interact with this Android manifest file for adding some of the features or for extending our features inside our app. Also, it provides you with the package name which is used when we are like integrating Firebase inside this Flutter application or any of the Flutter applications. So that's why also we use this Android manifest.xml file. Next, we are having this profile directory which is having Android manifest.xml. Earlier, this uses permission or this manifest section was present inside this main directory only, inside the Android manifest.xml present inside the main directory, but now it has been moved to this separate file. You can also ignore this file as we generally don't interact while we are developing our Flutter apps inside this. Next, we have this app level or the app directory build.gradle file which is storing the local properties, the plugins which are added by default, like you can see the Android plugin, the Kotlin-Android plugin, the compile SDK version for our app, the default configurations like the app will be working on minimum SDK version of 16 and the target SDK version should be 30. So it holds all the data related to our app. When we are integrating Firebase inside it inside our app, then we need to add the some of the dependencies and their implementation inside this dependency directory. So that's why we use or we interact with this file for adding those things. Next, we have this Gradle directory over here, which also we don't use mostly. In most of the cases we don't interact with this. For gitignore, you must be familiar with gitignore if you have worked with Git. So it basically holds all the name or location of the files which we don't want to send on GitHub when we are pushing our code to GitHub. Next, we have this build.gradle for the root directory of the Android directory, for the root of this Android directory. So inside this build.gradle file, we have the Kotlin version which is being used, some of the dependencies and their location like the android.tool.build.gradle and for the Kotlin as well. Next, we have the repositories for Google and JCenter being fetched over here, so that all the features which are available on those directories can be implemented in our Flutter project as well. And apart from that, we have this task clean and this sub project as well, but we generally don't interact with these. Sub project can be used when we are creating a sub project inside our main Flutter project. So that time we can use it, but most of the time you won't be using it until you are entering industry or you are working on large Flutter applications. Next, we have this Gradle properties file which holds the data related to the Android X usage and the enable of Jettifier and JB marks. So we don't interact with this, but sometimes you may need to interact if you are cloning some of the projects from related to Flutter from GitHub, then they may not be enabled or not be working with the Android X. So in that case, you need to change the properties over here so that to make your project work. Next, we have this Gradle W file. We don't interact with this, and we also don't interact with the Gradle.bat hello world app Android IML file. We also don't interact with it. Next, we have this local properties file which is like storing the directory for the Android SDK, for the Flutter SDK, for the build debug mode, the version of our app and the version code of our app. So if you are like releasing the app in some other version like 1.0.1 or 1.1.0, then you can change the version from here. If your SDK location is changed, then you can also update the locations for your SDK from here. Next, we have the settings.gradle file and we don't interact with it much. Coming to our build directory, inside this build directory we will be storing all the data related to the build for the apps which are being made. Inside this app, inside this outputs, here are two directories like the APK and the Flutter APK, where we store all the data related to our build for the apps which are being made throughout. So you can run the Flutter build command, which is the command for developing or building a Flutter project in debug or in the production mode. So you can use those commands, and once your app is built, it will be stored inside these directories. Rest all the directories which are present in this build directory are not useful for us. They store the data which is useful for the project, but we generally don't interact with those directories or don't work with those directories. Now let's move towards the iOS directory over here. So inside, as in the Android directory, we have various different sections for different things which we use. In the iOS also we have different sections, like there is the Flutter directory over here, which has the default debug X configuration, XCS configuration for our app. It is also having the generated.xc configuration for our app. Apart from that, we have this runner over here, which we use or which we interact with whenever we want to implement something or we want to integrate Firebase. So to get the package name or to add some of the properties for some of the plugins, we generally add it inside the info.plist file, or inside the appdelegate.swift file we change the code for it. Inside this assets.xca assets, we are having the assets or the icons for our app, like the basic front icon which is present inside the launcher. So that this is the icon which is present. I'll also be showing you in the upcoming videos how you can change these icons for your app, like the launcher icon. So yeah, next we have this base.l project. We don't interact with it. As I said previously, that appdelegate.swift file is that file which we interact with sometimes when we are running Flutter apps which are already pre-built and we are running them with the current Flutter versions. So they have been built with the old Flutter versions and we are trying to run them with this latest Flutter version. So in that case, we need to change the appdelegate.swift file over here. Next, we have this generated plugin. We don't interact with this and with this as well. We sometimes interact with this info.plist file over here to add some of the features for some dependencies or for some things which are being included inside our app, and iOS do not allow direct integration for that. So that's why we add some part of our code inside this info.plist file, and then we can integrate that thing inside our iOS part of our app. Next, we have this runner.bridging. We don't interact with it, and we also don't interact with these two directories which are present at the Xcode proj and this Xcode XC workspace. And as I told you previously, that .gitignore file is for ignoring all the files when we are sending our project to the GitHub. So let me close the iOS directory from here. Now I'll be covering more about this lib in the later part. Currently I'm just giving you an overview of all the directories which are present. After this lib, we are having this test directory for storing all the test things which we are making in our app. So we can store the test for the screens, for the some functionality, for database loading, for widget loading. We can add tests for all these things inside our app. So all the file related to this test will be stored inside this test directory, and we can directly run a command for running all the files which are present inside this test directory, so that everything inside the test is running and we don't have to run each file one by one. This web is something new which is being added when the Flutter released the web version in the stable mode. So it has all the file related to that. You can see that the index file is present, the FAV icon is also present for Flutter, the manifest JSON file having the details for the Flutter project when it is running inside the web version. So it is having the detail related to that. If you are developing something with Flutter for your web version or for web, then you can interact with those files. But when I generally develop apps for the Android and iOS part, so I don't generally interact with this web much. Next, we have this .gitignore file for ignoring all the files from our root directory. Next, there is .metadata, and this .package is present over here. So we don't interact with both of these things. These both things come pre-built when we are running the Flutter Create or creating a new Flutter project, along with this hello world app.iml file as well. Next, we have this pubspec.yaml and pubspec.log file. Let me first tell you about the pubspec.yaml file. So basically, we use this file for adding different packages inside our app, or for enabling the assets inside our app, changing the fonts inside our app, adding new font families inside our app. So this is the file which we add our code to implement all these features which I mentioned. We can also change the SDK for the app which we want to use and change the version for it. So this is the pubspec.yaml file which we use for adding all those things. We'll also be seeing how different things are implemented as we'll be proceeding with the future videos. Now talking about this pubspec.log file. So when we are adding something inside our pubspec.yaml file, and when we are sharing this the Flutter project with someone else, and he is trying to run, or he or she is trying to run your Flutter project, then there are chances that the SDK version and the version of Flutter may differ for him. In that case, this pubspec.log file comes handy, as it will be storing the data related to this pubspec.yaml file in a logged format, so the user who is running the project doesn't need won't be having any problem working or running your Flutter project, as all the data related to your version and all the things related on the basis of what you have developed will be coming handy for him, and will be like running will be resulting in the smooth running of the app inside his or her PC or laptop. Next we have this readme.md file. This is basically for what we can say, decorating our GitHub repository, or for letting the user know more about the project by mentioning some things about the project inside it when we are storing the app on GitHub. So this readme.md file is used for that purpose. Now coming to the basic Flutter architecture. So this was the basic Flutter architecture, like all these things are coming pre-built, and the lib directory is having only the main.dart file, and each of the new files which we'll be creating will be stored directly inside this lib directory. So if I'm creating a new file with the name.dart, so we'll be storing that inside the lib directory as well, and all the other files which we'll be creating for the backend part, front end part, the integration part, API part, all will be stored inside the lib directory. This is basically used when someone who is on a beginner level is working with Flutter, so they generally store all the things inside the same directory. Now talking about the intermediate file architecture or the intermediate file structure which is present. So inside the lib directory we have this src directory and the main.dart file. Now all the files related to our Flutter project except for the main.dart file will be going inside this src directory, and inside the src directory we have three different sections. One is for the view, one is for the model, and one is for the controller part. So according to the categories of the files which we are developing, we'll be storing the files inside these particular three directories. All the files related to the UI part or to the sections which are available to the user will be going inside this view directory. All the things which are related to the database, like the integration, the CRUD operations which are being performed on the database, how we are fetching the database and how we are extracting the data from JSON format and storing it in an like different format through various different classes and by assigning different variables. So in the all those things will be like coming, or files related to those things will be coming inside this models directory. And apart from that we are having this controller directory which will be used for storing all the data related to the API function or the API interaction or integration which is present inside our app. So we'll be storing all the data related to that inside this controller. Some of the backend part which is being implemented in our app is also stored inside this controller directory. So this was for the basic Flutter architecture. Like rest all the things are same as I have told you in the beginning of the video, and the only thing which is differing in the intermediate file architecture is the lib directory. Now let's move towards the advanced file architecture. Let me switch the screen. So here you can see that I have opened a new directory or a new project inside the VS Code, and inside the lib directory you can see that rest all the things are same as we have seen in the previous sections. Like for the intermediate part or for the basic Flutter architecture, some things might differ like this, but we don't use most of these files or don't interact with most of these files, so you can ignore those. Now coming to the lib directory, we have divided the app into various different sections, and on the basis of the properties for these sections we'll be storing the files related to those sections inside these directories. So this is the architecture which I learned when I was working as a Flutter developer at TypeScript. So this was the architecture which companies use when they are developing with big Flutter apps. Some of the things might get changed, like they can integrate two different things, like the repositories and responses can come under one single directory. So these some things can change, but more or less these things remains constant when we are working, or some companies working with the advanced Flutter architecture. Now let me show you or tell you about each of this directory and what are the files related to which we will be storing inside these directories. So as the name suggests, inside this API directory we will be storing all the data related to the API, like the data which is being fetched from the API or the API running part and fetch, and the integration part for the API will be stored inside this API directory. As you can see that I have an API for what's new, like fetching the data for what is new things which is being added inside the app. Inside the what's new you can see that I have added the what's new API over here. Next we have the blocks part. So we use blocks for integrating or for managing the state in an efficient way, and all the data related to the blocks we add inside this blocks directory. Next we have this models over here. So we use models for storing the database or for working with the database, like performing CRUD operations, fetching the database, and then converting it into an efficient way or in an efficient manner for displaying it to the user through the UI part. So we store all the data related to that inside the models directly over here. Next we have the repository. So if there are some functions which are which are occurring inside your app, like in my case mail is being sent, the user is being logged out, the user display is being changed, a user is being subscribed to a particular topic for Firebase cloud notification service. So all these functions, you can create files for that inside the repositories directory, and then you can directly trigger those functions through the app or through the backend part of your app. So we can store all these functions for all these functions which won't be returning us with some of the output. So we can store all those things inside our repository directory. Next we have this response directory over here, which will be storing the similar functions to the repository directory. But the major difference between both of these directories is that in the repository section we won't be getting any output as a response for the functions which we are triggering or for the functions which we are running. Whereas in the case of response directory, we'll be getting some response out of the functions which we are running. So as you can see that there is add to file, store file over here, or checking the connection is being made. So in both of these cases, some of the data will be returned to the user, and on the basis of the data which is being returned, some other thing will be occurring inside our app. So yeah, inside this response directory we store all the functions which are returning us with some of the data. Next we have this utils directory over here, which will be storing the styles for our app. If we are adding some particular styles inside our app, it can also hold some of the important data related to your app, like you are having some API key or you are having some credentials which you want to use inside our apps, and then you can store those things inside your important data.dart file present inside the utils. These are basically for storing the constant, like some things which won't be changing throughout the app, and we can use them throughout the app by directly implementing them from those files. So we store data related to that inside our utils directory. Like here you can see that I have a list for all the states which are available in India. So yeah, I have stored a constant for that inside the constant.dart file. Apart from that, you can also see that I have an event type list which I have created inside this constant.dart file. Now coming to the views directory. So this is similar to what we have seen in the intermediate file structure, but but herein we have like separated views into three different sections. The first one being the authentication part, the second one being the pages part, and third one being the partials. Starting with the auth, it will be storing, or it will be having the files related to the authentication part of our app. Like I have added Google login over here, sign up and login with email and password. So I have stored files related to this inside this authentication directory. Next I have pages. So all the UI part which is available inside our app related to each of the screen, like about the app screen is there and it is having some widgets. Then this active event screen is having is present inside the app, and it is having some widgets and event detail screen as well. So the UI part of that app and for all the screens I have stored inside this pages directory. And inside the partials we can store some of the widgets or some of the things which are being used, like in all of the screen. Some common widgets could be there, like circular progress indicator could be there, or some kind of button is there which is taking some text, and we are using same layout for the button throughout our app. So we can store that inside the partials directory which is present inside our view directory. So this was the function for all of these things which are present inside our view. And next or last, this is the main.dart file, which I have already told you what this is used for. We can add various different things or functions which are to be running. You can see that previously I showed you inside the main function that we have only the run app thing, but here you can see that I have added various different things. So as we'll be proceeding with the course, I'll be telling you how you can add different things inside your project and how you can improve your project slowly and gradually. We'll also be working on some of the apps and creating some real world apps and UIs in the later part of this course. So stay tuned for the upcoming videos. Now if you have got to learn something new from this course, then make sure to drop a like. Also share this course with the people in your community who are talking about Flutter or want to learn Flutter. Comment down what you find most interesting and which of the architecture you want to use or you will be using when you will be working with or developing a new Flutter app. Subscribe to the channel to get the latest update about the courses and about the new videos which are being posted on the channel regularly. So new videos are being posted every alternate day, so make sure to subscribe to get the update about them. Also make sure to check out Newton School through the link given in the description, and Launchpad as well, it is having some of the courses which can benefit you while you are learning new things. And thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for the upcoming videos.